Hi, today I wanted to show you how I made these crystal embellished sandals inspired by Prada Spring Summer 2010. I loved these back then when I first saw them, and they recently re-entered my brain when I saw Mackenzie Fitzgerald wearing them on TikTok. Then as I was planning for my DIYs this year, I found these clear kind of lucite looking sandals at the thrift store for like $6, so I knew I had to add this to my project list. I found the crystals online and it was surprisingly easy to do this project. I feel like I've been saying that about every project I'm doing, but that's not a bad thing. I'm really happy with how these turned out. I will say they are so loud, and I think probably the actual Prada versions are also so loud. Like, it just very statement making click clack noises that will happen if you wear them. I think for me, these are going to be a piece that I keep on display, but I really love them. I think they're so cool, and I'm so happy with how they turned out, which again, I say every time, but I'm really excited about my projects this year. So yeah, here's how I did it. And if you do it, let me know. Send me a pic because I want to see. Let's get into the tutorial. I started out with 3 styles of crystals and I just divided them up into 2 piles so that I could be sure I was giving each shoe the same amount of options so that once I finished one, I would have enough to finish the other. Then I'm going to use some bias tape in a gold tone to match the shoe. And I initially was only going to use this around the back of the heel and actually make holes in the straps, but this ended up working out so well that I decided to use it for every section. So here I am just measuring the bias tape to cut a piece that will fit around the back of the heel. And when I was working on this first shoe, I actually added all of the crystals onto the bias tape and then glued that heavy piece of bias tape with all the crystals hanging off of it onto the back of the shoe. I realized that the better method is to just add jump rings directly to the bias tape, which is what I did in the first one too, but adding the jump rings first and then gluing it to the shoe and then adding the crystals makes so much more sense. So here I have my first completed shoe, and I'm going to use this as a guide, and I'm going to show you the best method on the second shoe. So I am able to look at how I laid out the crystals on this shoe, look at the placement of the jump rings, look at how many jump rings I placed. If you're starting fresh, I recommend placing your crystals about ½ inch apart and making sure that your bias tape is obviously cut to the right size. Mark where the straps are or the ends of the bias tape will be, and then mark out about ½ inch, ½ inch apart dots where you want to place your jump rings. Once you have a completed shoe, you will also be able to just measure your second shoe's bias tapes against the first one and just mark it as I am here. Then I have some jump rings, and I'm just going to make my life easier by opening up a bunch of them at once. And I used a seam ripper to make the small holes in the bias tape to place the jump rings through. I think you could also use maybe a yarn needle, but I wouldn't go up to the size of like an awl because I think that will be too large. And then I am just placing the jump rings through that hole that I created and closing them up with the pliers. Then I am taking a heavy duty glue and applying it all around the edge of the shoe where I want to place the bias tape. And I also made a piece of bias tape for the strap, so I am just checking the placement and then I will glue that on as well. And I'd recommend you'd let this glue dry for about 24 hours just to make sure it's secure. And then I am laying out my crystals in the order that they need to be placed. I would recommend doing this for starting with your first shoe too, just so you can get a good idea of the balance and proportion and before you move forward with attaching all of the crystals. So I got lucky in that the crystals that I ordered came on these little kind of key rings that, you know what I mean, they're like a keychain. So I could just very easily slide them onto the jump rings. I think if you order Chandelier crystals, they should come this way. I'll link the ones I used down below. Once all your crystals are attached, you're done.